Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we're going to speak about the upcoming Wood Elf DLC. More specifically, the spell laws that are only accessible through the FLC. You see, there is a reference of new spell laws, which, as far as I can read into it, means that the Wood Elves will have multiple laws of magic introduced to them. Currently, in Total War Warhammer 2, the Wood Elves have access to 3 laws of magic: the Law of Life, the Law of Shadows, and the Law of Beasts. However, on the tabletop, they had access to other laws of magic. During 8th edition, which was the final edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, the Wood Elves had access to the laws of high magic and dark magic, and back in the days of 6th edition, they had their own law, the Law of Athalorin, also known as Fey magic. So if they mean that multiple laws of magic will be introduced, it is very likely that we'll at least see high and dark magic being introduced for the Wood Elves. Mainly because both laws of magic were almost identical to those of the original races that they were based on. This meaning that the Wood Elves would have access to the same spells as the Dark Elves and the High Elves do respectively. Which works out well considering that in the tabletop they really never had access to a lot of laws of magic, unlike many other races. However, I'd also like to believe that the Law of Athalorin will also make its interpretation in Total War Warhammer. This would make sense as we've already seen various older forms of laws of magic being introduced in Total War Warhammer through other DLC, and there aren't really any other unique spell laws currently missing. Yes, there are a few specifically for the Warriors of Chaos, like the Law of Sonash, and for the other Chaos Gods, but obviously we are to expect those laws of magic in the third and final game of the series, when the Chaos Demons finally get introduced. So the obvious choice here would be once again the Law of Athalorin, which begs the question, what is the Law of Athalorin? For that, let's read into the entry of the Warhammer Fantasy 6th edition army book for the Wood Elves, Fey Magic of the Wood Elves. The elves are able to manipulate the winds of magic with a grace, ease, and flair unmatched by any of the younger, cruder races. Wood Elves are no exception, and there are many skilled practitioners of their own particular Fey strand of magic within the bounds of Athalorin. Wood Elf mages tend to follow the path of the ancient elven god of renewal and rebirth, Isha, and are sometimes known as the handmaidens or stewards of Ariel. Skilled in the arts of spell weaving, they are able to manipulate the energies of Athalorin in many varied ways. They are adept at creating powerful illusions and glamours, as well as being masters in the mystical arts of healing and regrowth. They are capable of weaving spells of confusion and trickery that can ensure that an intruder will be unable to discover an elven hall, even if he walks only feet from its majestic doors. They can cast dangerous blasts that strip trespassers of their wits and memories, and heal grievous wounds with but the touch of the hand. They are capable of encouraging trees and undergrowth to spontaneous growth, which can then be directed to create elegant and artful forms. In this manner, the elves can create beautiful artistry, such as delicately twisting pillars of living branches that form the basis of graceful monuments and structures. Trees and foliage can be encouraged by skillful Wood Elf mages to uproot and move about, blocking off paths and creating new glades. This is often used as a subtle warning, and most will be so unnerved by this that they will leave Athalorin immediately. But those who choose to ignore such warnings are dealt with without mercy. Other Wood Elf mages specialize in learning the secret magical paths of Athalorin, enabling them to disappear like smoke, only to reappear in a completely different location. Wood Elf mages are capable of all manner of Fey sorceries and artful spells, and are rightfully feared by all. There is a bit of backstory regarding the lore of Athalorin. Understandably so, it gives very much the vibe of a mixture of the lore of Shadow and the lore of Life. But here stands the question, could the lore of Athalorin be implemented into Total War Warhammer? In short, I'd say so, but with a few changes. You see, the lore of Athalorin had 6 spells, which is pretty much what every other spell lore has in the Total War Warhammer series. The problem is more the spells themselves, if taking inspiration from the 6th edition army book. Obviously there are some spells from the Warhammer Fantasy RPG game, but more than likely they'll look towards the lore in the army books, as it's confirmed that the army books themselves are the biggest source of inspiration. There are 6 spells here, which we will read out in their entirety and see if they can be implemented as is or would need to be changed. Bear in mind that obviously what I'm going to be reading now is how the spells were used in the tabletop, and would at the very least require some subtle changes in order to work efficiently in Total War Warhammer. The first spell is Tree Singing. The mage encourages the spirits of Athalorin to make the forest shift and begin moving. The spell may be cast on any wood, also known as forests, within 18 inches of the caster, provided there are no enemy models within it. The spell makes the chosen wood move d3 plus 1 inches in a direction nominated by the caster, before rolling. The wood can contain friendly units, but the units must be entirely within the woods. If one or more models in the unit is outside the wood, then the spell cannot be cast on that wood. Friendly troops within the woods are moved with it, but must end their turn at least 1 inch away from enemy troops, and having counted as moved. The wood stops moving as soon as it comes in contact with any other unit or piece of terrain. A wood can be moved more than once in the same magic phase. Alternatively, the spell can be used to inflict d6 strength 5 hits on a single enemy unit that is even partially within a wood or similar terrain feature. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem that we'd get the first version of the spell. If we can be very honest with ourselves, I don't think that Creative Assembly's engine would be able to allow for such things. I mean, it could be entirely wrong and Creative Assembly could surprise us, but more than likely we would see it in its second form, where it would probably be changed into the form of a missile spell, if anything. A magic missile for a baseline spell seems more or less appropriate. Now let's move on to the second spell, Fury of the Forest. Twisted branches and thorns burst into spontaneous growth, attacking the enemies of Athalorin. This spell may be cast on a single unengaged enemy unit within 18 inches. If successfully cast, the spell causes d6 strength 4 hits. If the target is within 6 inches of a wood, then this is increased to d6 strength 5 hits. This is easy enough to translate, a direct damage spell which is good against high model count units. An almost carbon copy of the Fate of Buna spell, very much the same, nothing would need to be changed, and it would work rather well. Our third spell is known as the Hidden Path. Using this spell, the caster moves a single friendly unit out of the corporal world, and beyond the reach of mortals. This spell may be cast on a single unengaged friendly unit within 18 inches. If the spell is successful, the unit treats all terrain as open ground, and cannot be harmed by non-magical missile weapons, until the start of the caster's next magic phase. Should the unit become engaged in close combat, the spell ends instantly. In all honesty, I see this spell being implemented in one of two ways. The first, and probably the most realistic, would be to give the chosen unit stalk and a speed buff, meaning that it could move around the battlefield much more quicker and unseen. A second, and probably unrealistic idea, would be to give the chosen unit ethereal for a small while, nothing too drastic, maybe 20 seconds or so, and also still allow them to do damage. This would be rather interesting to see a unit of, say for example, Glade Guard receive the ethereal special rule whilst fighting in the front line. They could become quite the tar pit for a while, allowing you to mobilize your troops better. Yes, I know Dryads would have probably been the better option here, but I'm not a fan of them myself. The fourth possible spell is the Twilight Host. The mage weaves a powerful illusion, and ghostly grey shapes appear at the side of the wood elves. The Twilight Host may be cast upon any friendly unit within 18 inches of the caster. This unit may be engaged in close combat. Until the caster's next magic phase, the unit causes fear. If the unit would already cause fear, it would instead cause terror. Until the caster's next magic phase. A unit cannot be affected by this spell twice in the same magic phase. To my knowledge, in Total War Warhammer, I don't believe there are any other spells that work with other modifiers, which then would be enhanced or not, barring overcasting of course. So I would probably see it here as a two-tiered spell, so I see it being represented as follows. The first tier would cause fear. Nothing too drastic, but then again it's a decent spell already. The second tier itself would cause terror, and there could also be a very powerful third tier which would have to be drastically overcasted, which could cause terror once again and maybe even reduce melee defense for any enemies near that unit specifically. The fifth spell is Ariel's Blessing. The caster calls upon the healing powers of Ariel, undoing even the most grievous injuries and restoring life to those who have fallen. This spell may be cast upon a single friendly unit within 18 inches and may be targeted on a unit engaged in close combat. This could even be the mage herself. This unit gains the regeneration special rule until the start of the player's next magic phase. This spell may also be cast into combat, so I would see this as a basic heal which you could cast on any of your friendly units. And it could be likely to see this spell also have a second tier which would do an area of effect heal to all your friendly units. It's very likely a spell such as this would be the baseline spell for all casters with the lore of Athalorin, meaning that you would have this spell unlocked as soon as you recruited the character. And finally we have the Call of the Hunt. The spirit of Kurnos fills the target of the spell, infusing them with part of his savagery, anger and power. This spell may be cast upon a single friendly unit within 18 inches, and may be targeted on a unit engaged in close combat. If already engaged in combat, each model in the unit gains +1 attack, does not affect steeds or ridden mounts. If the unit is not engaged in combat, it immediately makes a 2d6 inches move forward towards the nearest enemy unit that it can see. If it can see no enemy unit, then it will move straight forwards. For skirmishers, nominate a direction before rolling. The rest is very tabletop specific, so we will omit this. So how could this spell be implemented? It could work as a buff to drastically improve the damage output of a unit. However, this is the last spell available in the tabletop for this lore of magic. Yeah, the lore itself wasn't that great back in the days, so the Call of the Hunt itself would have to be changed to be something well more impressive. A simple buff like that isn't really good, especially when you compare it to other lores of magic and their final spells. I still think that the spell itself should bolster the damage output of units, but instead of maybe just a singular unit, it could be a very large area of effect. This would give the spell a bit more of a wow-worthy feel. Maybe there could also be a second tier to this spell. When overcasted quite heavily, it could even work map-wide. That might be a tad overpowered, but then again, it could be rather interesting. It really depends on balancing, which is possibly why it could be turned into an area effect rather than map-wide. I'm really hoping that the lore of Athalorin will make it into this DLC round. It makes sense, as obviously this is another Wood Elf-centric DLC as far as we're aware. And since they didn't add it in the original Realm of the Wood Elves DLC, now might be the only time to introduce this lore of magic. It could also very well just be that they want to introduce just the lores of high and dark magic for the Wood Elves. While those lores of magic aren't exactly new, they would indeed be counted as new for the Wood Elves. But I feel like that would be a massive disappointment if it was just them and not being accompanied by the lore of Athalorin. Especially now, since we're aware that there is a 7-month break between DLC. This would most likely leave a lot of time to implement such stuff, including new spell lores, completely new spell lores at that. And I think that my interpretation of the lore of Athalorin itself is very much doable. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm curious to see if you think we'll just get the lore of high magic and dark magic, or if we'll also get the lore of Athalorin too. And how would you see the lore of Athalorin being implemented into the game? But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince and Okro for subscribing to us at our fame level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our king level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.